We're ready.
I'd like to welcome the Island Getaways Travel Tribe and my fellow USC alumni. Thank you for joining us today for another in our series of virtual vacations. I am Jacinta Pereira, owner and founder of Island Getaways. I started the company 24 years ago with the concept of custom design travel, and I will come back to that at the end to tell you how that applies to our destination today. I am an expert for Pacific and Asia, also an islands expert, and a specialist for cruises worldwide of all sizes and types. Now, while I have traveled to Europe several times and Italy several times, I'm not an expert for Italy, so I partner with travel industry colleagues who are. And today I have two very special guest experts, two of my favorite people that I'm going to introduce you to as we journey through the Italian boot from top to bottom, pretty much. Elena Maloney graduated from university and started her career in the travel industry actually as a travel agent. And as we know, that's a job that has changed and evolved over the years, so it's quite different right now. But she did eventually become a business manager, and she has worked with CDAT World Tours for the last 7 years. Is that correct? 7? Yes,
that's correct.
She is joining us from the East Coast. She's actually in New Jersey, and I know that we have attendees today in all the time zones from East Coast to West Coast and even in Hawaii. So she's joining us from the East Coast with some of you. And she has traveled extensively in North America, Europe, Africa, South Pacific, and Asia. Some of her favorite countries are France and Italy. Nothing wrong with that, mine too. South Africa, and she enjoys Australia and New Zealand. Our other guest expert today is Ralph Corbner. He actually grew up in Germany on a horse ranch. And he enjoyed time with his younger brother, his cousins, and lots of animals. He's an animal lover, as I am as well. So we have that in common. He also has a wealth of experience in the travel industry. All of us have decades of experience to bring to the table. His family had travel as part of their, annual rhythm. He was very used to doing that from childhood. Once he completed studies in German and California universities, he started working in the travel industry. He is a very experienced operations manager. His travels include Asia, Africa, Europe, again, Australia, New Zealand. The three of us agree on those two for sure. And all of that has broadened his geographic and cultural knowledge. So I just want to mention that last week we had some very good breaking news. A week ago, the European Union announced that they would be welcoming vaccinated U.S. travelers to Europe starting as early as this summer. So that's a big movement forward. Good news for all of us. And today we are traveling to Italy, which is in the heart of the Mediterranean, one of the most visited countries in the world. Pre-COVID, I believe it was in the top 5 of favorite destinations. And we are going to preview real possibilities for your future reference for travel planning for Italy. We have lots of ground to cover today, and we're using an actual itinerary. If you are a first-time visitor to Italy, you have not been there yet, this will be a comprehensive overview. If you are a return visitor, then you'll probably be more focused on specific locations, and that's all wonderful. But since we have so much wonderful information to share with you, I'm going to pass the baton to Ralph to get us started, and I will say, Andiamo, let's go to Italy.
All right, here we go. So just a quick overview of the Italian boot, north to south, I should say northwest to southeast. We shared with you best travel times just very quickly. You can technically do Italy around the year, especially the south. The southern Italy has a climate that is similar to Southern California. And those of you who have been here in the winter know what Southern California looks like. There are also some great winter programs we have. We recommend during normal years, Italy can get very crowded, that you look at shoulder seasons, but Jacinta would guide you in that regard very, very nicely. She's very, very familiar with the issues of over-tourism, which does exist, unfortunately, in some places. Time difference from the West Coast is 9 hours ahead, so take your time and add 9 hours. The size of Italy is approximately New Mexico. We like to do this because we here in America don't always understand the size of European countries, but it gives you an idea what you would be covering. For example, if you go from Rome to Naples, that's about a 2-hour trip. So it's something that is not as hard as getting around here in this country, in our own country. There's no visa requirements. Jacinta just mentioned that they will open for vaccinated travelers. We're still evaluating how you prove the vaccination. I think they are demanding QR codes, but this is a developing story right now. Jacinta can tell you this. I think this may go into next year. All right, Alina, let us look at the next slide, please. A couple of tips here for me, and we will have some additional tips for you in regard to the individual destinations. Museums are closed on Mondays, as in many areas in Europe. A couple of tips for, I think, more so the ladies here, especially when you visit churches and things of that nature. That's a tip that is valid for many countries. Often Italy is closed. Think of the so-called siesta. Even Northern Europe still sometimes has these issues. Dinner is usually a little bit later than we're used to, 7, 9:30. Taxis ordered by phone or at the taxi stands. And Alena thought this is a good tip if you want to pay, say, il conto. I don't like to pay, so I never use that. But and then coffee. Coffee, ladies and gentlemen, coffee is an interesting culture. There's a couple of tips here that you can see. I drove down the entire length of the Italian boot, even taking the car to Sicily, and we basically made it by stopping every 2 hours for espresso. This is how we stayed. They have these wonderful roadside places where you can do this. I think the next one will show us, Alena, the tour that we picked. Jacinta thought this is a good idea. It covers a lot of the key places that we will quickly visit with you. It's called Fantasia All Italy. We have lots of tours, but we also do lots of customization for you, which in this past COVID time may actually be a good choice. So you see here Assisi, Siena, Florence, Bologna, Venice, all highlights: Tuscany, Rome, Naples, Pompeii, Sorrento, and Capri, the famous island. Let us now start. I think, Alena, you was going to take us from Rome to Assisi, right?
That is correct. So our first little stop is the small town of Assisi. It's in the Umbria region of Italy. It is the birthplace of St. Francis. And the highlight is the basilica that you can see in these two pictures. It is a very large basilica. You can see 13th century frescoes and masterpieces throughout. St. Francis is actually buried in the crypt. Going over to Siena. Siena is a medieval city with Romanesque and Gothic architecture. In the center, which is the pictures that are on the screen right now, it has a unique square in the center. It's shell-shaped, and it is known as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's called the Piazza del Campo, and is known for the Palio, which is a historic horse race that's run twice every summer. Also in Siena has some other beautiful areas throughout the town. Check out the Fonte Gaia, which is the large fountain in the middle of that piazza. If you want to climb to the top of Torre del Mangia, it actually offers the best views of the city. It is worth the climb. Piazza del Duomo, which is this picture to the right, the sort of black and white church that you see there. That is one of the most magnificent treasures in this small town of Siena. You can visit the cathedral, the crypt, and the library. Some unique little restaurants in the town. The Taverna De San Giuseppe is known for authentic and traditional recipes. Tre Christi is housed in a 15th century building, and it has medieval inspired paintings all throughout the wall. It's actually great for an elegant or romantic dinner out, and it's right in the historic center of town. And for those wine lovers like me, if you want to go to a little Cava de Novoseschi, it's known for its large selection of French and Italian wines and champagnes, and that's also located right in the historic part of town. So it's well worth a little afternoon stop or evening stop and try some of the wines. And on to you, Jacinta.
Mm. Florence is the capital of the Tuscany region, and Forbes has ranked it as one of the most beautiful cities in the world. You can see why. There's a beautiful aerial shot here of Florence, and the photo at the top, you can notice on the right-hand side, the iconic Santa Maria del Fiore, also known as the Duomo, that dome, the terracotta-lined dome. Can be seen for miles around. It's very iconic. This was originally a Roman city. It was a center of medieval European trade and finance. So it was an economic center, but it's also known as the cradle of the Renaissance. So very famous for masterpieces of Renaissance art and architecture, including that cathedral. You can see another close-up shot of it in the bottom left. And then the bottom right, you see the Ponte Vecchio, one of the famous bridges there in Florence. And Elena, if you could go to the next slide, we'll take a closer look at the cathedral. Here you see the white facade of the cathedral, which is dramatically different from the dome on the upper right-hand side. Down at the lower left, you have the Campanile, the bell tower that was designed by Giotto. The the cathedral was engineered by Vermicelli. So if you know your art history, your architects and your artisans, very famous churches, cathedrals in this area. Also very famous museums and galleries. We could go to the next slide, please. So of course you will recognize the Michelangelo's famous statue of David, which is in the Galleria dell'Accademia. The Uffizi Gallery here in Florence is also famous for having many fine pieces of artwork, including Botticelli's The Birth of Venus and Da Vinci's Annunciation. And then Elena, can you tell us a little bit about this intriguing photo in the bottom right?
Yes. So I put this photo in purposely. This is actually one of our colleagues. When she went recently, a few years ago, with her family, we did a multi-generational family trip for her. And when they were in Florence, they did a themed Renaissance evening where they all had dressed in Renaissance costumes. There was entertainment and food. It was a great night. And that is something that we can do some unique little activities like that in your itinerary. So it's not just going into a city and seeing all the churches. You have these fun little activities. I just want to point out, I personally love the Michelangelo David statue in Florence, but to me, the most fascinating part about that museum is before you get to his statue, you see all of his unfinished work. And there's these big blocks of marble where you can just start to see where he started sculpting out a leg or an arm. And I thought that was fascinating. Just a little different. We now move on to Pisa. And Pisa is actually a very short journey from Florence. Most people do it as a day trip out of Florence. Of course, the most well known site is the Leaning Tower. And all of these sites that you see here can be found in the Piazza del Miracoli, which is the Square of Miracles. You can climb to the top of the Leaning Tower, and I highly recommend it. It's worth the climb. You have some wonderful views when from the top. You also can visit the cathedral or the Duomo and the baptistry. Um, Two of my favorite things that I did was to climb the top of the tower, and then I took a nice afternoon stroll along the Arno River, as you can see in the bottom left here. While you're there, try one of the local snacks, which is ceccinina, which is a thin, gluten free bread made with chickpea flour, water, oil, salt, and black pepper. And it's a really fun little snack. It's always fun to try something that the locals eat. We go over to Bologna. Bologna is actually the historic capital of the Emilia Romagna area. In the center city, you can see arched colonnades or porticos, shopping streets, cafes, medieval and Renaissance buildings. The Basilica, which you see there on the bottom left, it's one of the biggest in the world. And there are many towers in town, but two of the most famous ones are the picture you see on the top right, the Azzanelli and the Giranzenda. Sorry. They're very unique because they're sort of odd shaped towers. Now, Bologna is known as a gourmet's foodie town. It's all of the food in Bologna is known for strong flavors, a lot of meats and wines. Um, Tortellini is well known coming from Bologna. Also, you think of bolognese sauce. Well, tagliatelle au ragu is with the bolognese sauce. Green lasagna, which is where spinach is mixed in with the pasta flour. And then, of course, doing a meat and cheese platter with local cheeses and local sliced cured meats, typically served with pickled or marinated vegetables and some breads that are tigeli, which is a flat, thick bread baked in the oven. Or there's the crescentine, which is very thin and crispy and fried. Padua is actually claims to be the oldest city in northern Italy. It's home to the second largest university. Um, it actually during World War II, Mussolini did a lot of his speeches from Padua because I think of the university and the fact that it was also an industrial city. But it also was home to the large resistance force that was in place at that time. The basilica is often visited by pilgrims from the Catholic faith. And I think it's over to you, Ralph.
All righty, on we go to Venice. Now, just a quick mention. I grew up in Europe in the 50s and 60s, and my mother was a great lover of Venice. So we boys were herded into Venice every August at her birthday. And somehow I grew up with the city. To me, it is still the most fascinating city in the world. And when you travel through it today, even though you see lots of maintenance that would be required, the wealth that the city once had is just absolutely amazing. And you can see it in the architecture. The Republic of Venice, trading and powerhouse over centuries, lasts from the 7th to the 18th century. It loses its power completely during the Napoleonic Wars. It was actually the wealthiest city on the planet in the 13th century, the most prosperous in Europe. And it slowly started a decline after Constantinople falls, today's Istanbul, in 1453, and the discovery of the sea passage to India opens up. Here, a little tidbit, you may have heard about this. MOSE, is the new flood prevention system for the lagoon of Venice. And this engaged for the first time on October 3, 2020, so just a few months ago. And it apparently did prevent the flooding of St. Mark's Square. So we're hoping that this will help prevent these floods that Venice regularly suffers. On the upper right, you see the Canale Grande. This is the main street. On the left side, again, the Canale Grande, and the lower right, this is a picture of the Doge Palace and the Campanile. And this is kind of actually, if you're looking at good locations, again, Jacinta would advise you on this one. To the right of this picture are several hotels that are very close to St. Mark's Square, super hotels. Even during New Year's, the fireworks are from a ship here, so you would be fronting those fireworks. We have had clients there over New Year's; they just absolutely loved it. All right, we have another picture here. Next slide. These are actually images of St. Mark's Square. This is the single most famous plaza in Venice, and this is where you kind of hotel-wise would like to be close to. The next photo, I think, shows the famous Basilica. This one was completed in 1071, and there are these famous gilt bronze horses on top of the main entrance. They were actually, pardon if I use this word, stolen from Constantinople. The Crusaders flowing back from the Holy Land through today's Istanbul, then Constantinople. They stole about anything that wasn't nail tight. And when you go into Western Europe today, you actually can up in smaller towns where the pastor very proudly tells you that the local church has doors from Istanbul. This happened to me, and I stood in this presentation the pastor gave a city of Limburg, south of Cologne. And I thought to myself, oh, he's just told us that his doors are stolen that belong to that he had in this church. So very interesting side story. Anyhow, the horses that you see here are actually replicas. The actual horses are inside. We have another photo, I think. Is this the, okay, on the left side, the famous Bridge of Sighs. This is a limestone bridge. It was finished in 1603, and it leads you from the Doge Palace into interrogation rooms. On the left side here is the Doge Palace with interrogation rooms, and once people were convicted, they would go to the across the bridge to the new prison, and would often never come out. And they saw the canal for the last time when they crossed this bridge. That's the story on this.
Those little windows right there were the last look outside, apparently.
Right. And there are a couple of tips for Venice here. We have limited time, so I just want to leave you with this. You can always come back to us if you miss something. A guided walk of Venice is a walking tour. There's no cars here. It gives you a medieval feeling when you walk through Venice, and this is one of the things that I enjoyed even as a child already so much. It was so different. So you do a walking tour. If you are interested, ask that the first ever Jewish ghetto of 1516 be included in the walking tour. Not everyone may like that, but it's an interesting quarter within Venice. The Basilica that we just spoke about offers skip the line tours with terrace access. So you go upstairs and you have a view over the plain. A must is a gondola ride. My recommendation is to actually take a gondola ride from St. Mark's Square to the Rialto Bridge.
Which is right there.
Which you see here, yes. The Doge Palace skip the line tour is a must. Then you may have heard of this a little bit outside Venice. Think of it as a suburb. Is Murano, and Murano is famous for the Murano glass. Most of us include tours like this. My recommendation is also just get lost in this city. As long as you are capable of walking. You don't have to be a big hiker. You can't really end up anywhere strange because there's always some water, some bridge. And the inner city is actually well signed. So once you have gotten yourself lost and you want to find back, there's signs to the Rialto Bridge. There's signs to St. Mark's Square. These are ancient signs that are on the corner of the houses, which are great. They kind of get you back to where you can be orient yourself again. The Rialto Bridge, by the way, was completed in 1591. I usually, when I say these numbers, I give you completed dates because often there was a prior bridge. They improved the bridge or it needed repairs. So the completed date is usually, to me, the better date. What else did I want to share with you? Okay, a couple of restaurants. Now, first of all, if you're interested in food, so many of us nowadays think of ourselves as foodies and we want to experience food as part of our travel. Fair enough. It's full of Michelin star restaurants. You can look it up. Jacinta can help you with this. I'll give you a couple that I thought were interesting. The Osteria alla Fresca, it's exists since 1903. It actually is typical Venetian cuisine. It's not altered. It's not modernized. Then you have a restaurant called La Palanca. It's a neighborhood cafe bar. These are always interesting to me because the locals actually frequent them. And this particular one is also in areas that are less touristy within Venice. Believe it or not, there are some areas of Venice that are where we tourists don't necessarily find our way to. And then the Ristorante Quadri. I wrote this down because it actually offers tables overlooking St. Mark's Square. Now, usually when you sit down at St. Mark's Square, many people do this for a coffee. I certainly did. Good Lord, the prices are outrageous in some cases. Just afford it. It's part of Italy, and in this case, the restaurant though has amazing dishes, extraordinary creation by a former Michelin chef too. So that's basically a little bit about Venice. You can always ask us more questions, and I think Jacinta, you want to talk to them about Tuscany in general a little bit right now, right?
Yes, but before we move on, I did want to go back. I just wanted to rewind for a moment and go back because many people may not know that Venice is a collection of over 100 islands in that lagoon in the Adriatic Sea. And you had mentioned Murano, which is very famous for the glass blowing, which you can go and see actually being produced. Murano as well, Lido, but there are other islands. Of course, I'm interested in islands, so I've been to them. There are areas outside of central Venice that are also very interesting, little side trips and very accessible. And I did want to actually have both of you just take a moment here because you had mentioned the skip the line, and I should have mentioned this with Florence, with the very, very popular museums, galleries, churches, cathedrals, there tend to be very, very long lines. I know if you walk up to the Uffizi Gallery, if you just turn up, you will see a line extending around the building, just snaking all the way down and around if you have not made a reservation, and you will not be getting in at that time. So it does take some planning. Now, one of the wonderful things that Cedar World Tours provides is skip the line feature. If you could just one of you briefly explain what that is, that's a tremendous benefit.
So what skip the line is it's a guided tour, but your guide will actually bring you to the front of the line right in at the time that you're scheduled to go in. So if you're scheduled to have the tour at 10 o'clock in the morning, you skip the whole line, you walk right in at that time, and you get the full benefit of having a guided tour without wasting 4 to 5 to 6 hours waiting in a line and not sure if you're ever going to get in there. And you can see more of the city then because you've already done without waiting and wasting that time, your precious time.
It's a lot more efficient. Yes, and this is also true in Rome. When we get to Rome, this will also apply. Elena, if you could go to the next slide, we'll go back to Tuscany here. So it's not all about cities and urban areas and major sightseeing. Italy is very famous. Central Italy is very famous. Tuscany has these dramatic landscapes that we have all seen, you know, hilltop towns with just breathtaking views of vineyards and olive groves. And, you know, this is an area that produces a lot of olive oil and is known for dry red wines. The historic cities of Florence and Siena are located in Tuscany, but you do also want to enjoy some of the countryside between these cities, especially if you're on a tour, you know, and a lot of these locations are in proximity to the major cities, and you will travel through these areas as you go from point to point. This area is also, again, known for delicious local dishes made with simple, fresh, local, seasonal ingredients. So it's not just about pasta and pizza in Italy. There's quite a variety of cuisine from region to region. And I know Elena has alluded to some of this, and Ralph has also talked about, you know, some of the restaurants and the cuisine in different areas. So just keep that in mind if you are a foodie, a food and wine, or I would say food and beverage person. Lots of very different experiences here.
I will just make a point on this one. This is one of the areas that has wonderful red wine. And typically, if we're taking clients up to Montepulciano, they'll do a wine tasting and included up here. And if you so desire, you can also do a villa and stay in a private villa in Tuscany. A lot of people will choose to have a couple of nights or a full week, for that matter, in a villa.
Mm-hmm.
This makes sense, especially if you travel with family, which we have a lot. They love to rent a villa. And the villas exist in different on different levels, also price-wise. You can have one where you supply yourself, but you can also have the services that you require, including cooks, people that are, you know, cleaning your rooms, that really cater to you. It's a little bit higher price-wise, but many of us can afford these things.
So now we go down to Rome, the Eternal City, and Italy's capital. It's one of Europe's richest cities in terms of history, art, architecture, cuisine, shopping, and just the general life. You walk through Rome and you get energized by the people, the people on the little Vespas running around. Westerners for many centuries have considered Rome to be the world's capital. Its historic center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I can honestly say Rome is charming by day, but I think is absolutely romantic and beautiful by night. While in Rome, you will go and visit the papal state of Vatican City, which is its own country, and it actually is the world's smallest country. So on a trip to Rome, you actually are visiting two countries. And so now, of course, we are going to continue on to the Vatican. And this, if nothing else, this is the area where skip the line is absolute must.
Yes.
The line of people that want to go and tour the Vatican City is just immense, and the line is super long. You have to have reservations, and I highly recommend you have a guided tour because there is so much to see. It actually has one of the world's most important art collections inside Vatican City. And when you do your tour, you're going to see galleries of tapestry, geographical maps, There's Raphael's rooms. And of course, the highlight to any visit is the Sistine Chapel and that amazing, amazing ceiling. I personally wish the first time I was there, I wish I could lay on a gurney on my back and have someone push me so I could just look up at that ceiling. It is just absolutely amazing. Of course, St. Peter's Basilica is gorgeous, and it is the world's largest church. Other sites in Rome is the beautiful Trevi Fountain. And I don't know how old anyone is who's on our little program, but there was a movie called Three Coins in a Fountain back in the 50s. And this movie spurred a myth. So when you go to the Trevi Fountain, you see all the people throwing coins in. The myth is your first coin you throw in, one coin means you will return to Rome. If you throw two coins in, it means you will meet an attractive Italian. If you throw three coins in, you will marry the person that you have met. So I have thrown my 3 coins in the fountain. It didn't happen. But I have returned to Rome. So
I'm just wondering what they do with all of those coins when they collect them. That's
exactly.
what I want to know.
Exactly.
They do clean it up periodically. What happens to the change?
I hope it goes to something good. Cleaning, probably maintenance, just to keep it clean.
Italy,
I went there once when it was actually closed. Yeah.
In Italy, you don't know what happens to the change.
No. Another wonderful area and very popular is the Spanish Steps that you see here. This was actually built in the beginning of the 18th century. It's the site of many fashion shows, and it's a great place to sit, relax, have a gelato, and just take in the people watching and the scenery. Another place I don't have a picture here, but is Piazza Navono. It's a beautiful Baroque square with 3 gorgeous fountains and sculptures throughout. It has lots of cafes, restaurants, really good gelato shops. I think it's a great place to go in the evening and strolling in that area, grab something to eat. There are a ton of restaurants in Rome. I will just make a couple of suggestions. For someone who wants to do ultimate, there is a 3-star Michelin restaurant that offers panoramic views of Rome and the Vatican, and that's La Pergola. Pergola. Excuse me, my Italian has deserted me. But because it is so popular, you do have to make reservations well in advance. Aquilina is a play on words of mouth-watering, and they say the reputation precedes it, and that's exactly how it is, mouth-watering food. Pirelli's has been serving food to locals since 1911, and it is well known and considered the best for carbonara anywhere else in Rome. Sorry, guys, hit the wrong button. Another well-known site is the Pantheon. It actually was built in 126 AD in Hadrian's reign. It's a circular building, and the top is actually open, and that's how they get natural light in there. There are a number of tombs in there, and one of the most famous is Raphael's, the painter. The Forum, the Roman Forum, when it was first built, the Forum was the place to be for the political and social activities in ancient Rome. Unfortunately, when the Roman Empire fell, it was buried, and it wasn't excavated. The site wasn't excavated until the 20th century. Personally, I'm a little history buff, and I loved being able to walk down some of these pathways and see, and I sort of stopped and thought, wow, I'm standing where Julius Caesar once stood hundreds of years ago. It's just pretty fascinating when you think of the history. You can do a guided tour here, and they do offer skip the line access. Now, another little tip is to do the forum, depending on how many days you're staying in Rome, but to do the forum in the morning, because typically most people will go see the Vatican in the morning and the Coliseum in the morning and do the forum in the afternoon. But you can reverse it, and the crowds are a little bit less that way. For Rome, for me, was very fascinating because you walk down a regular old street and you're walking along and you're seeing modern shops and modern restaurants, and you're sort of walking along, and right on the sidewalk is a little cutout, and there's a piece of a ruin that dates back to Julius Caesar time. So it's very fascinating. Of course, the Colosseum is one of the well-known symbols of Rome. It was constructed in the year 72 and is known as one of the seven wonders of the modern world. I believe, Ralph, you have something to say about the next picture?
Yeah, I wanted to share with you that if you have the time, you should visit Ostia Antica. Ostia is the ancient port of Rome in antiquity. And it has also been, it was also buried, but you can recognize certain things there. One of the interesting things I find is you see old tenements, how people lived, and you can also see the shops where the merchants, wholesalers, we would probably call them today, that would bring wares from around the Mediterranean, would sell their stuff. This would come in on ships, and there was a great trade going on there. And so for me, it was interesting to see this. The second tip I would have is also on the outside of Rome. These are day excursions. It's not far. I think it's about 18 miles outside, is Hadrian's Villa. Hadrian is one of the 5 good emperors. He's well documented by a French-Belgian writer, Margaret Yourcenar, who in the 20th century wrote a great book. In fact, this book is so famous, she became the first woman that was accepted to the Académie Française in, I think it was 1979. You can look her up. And so Hadrian is instrumental in also in building in many areas in the Roman Empire. You will find him in Athens. You will find him in what today is Turkey. And Hadrian's Villa is where he essentially retired. He's the most traveled Roman emperor, and we'll come across him in a moment again. So Hadrian's Villa is fascinating, and you can combine this with a Renaissance villa that you can also visit, Villa d'Este, also very famous, quite beautiful. These are places on the outside. Jacinta can arrange visits to these places so it's organized. Remember the skip the line that we have emphasized several times now. She can also, depending on your requirement for convenience. I'm old enough that I don't squeeze around in public transportation these days anymore. When one is younger, one may want to save some money, but she can arrange these things, including the transportation, for example. But I will also say that if you want to be on your own, you can absolutely reach both of these sites, Ostia Antica, Hadrian's Villa, and the Villa d'Este, in public transportation. Public transportation is actually quite good. Anywhere in Italy these days. It wasn't 200 years ago when the German philosopher and statesman Johann Wolfgang Goethe complained about the unreliability of Italian transportation and the lateness of the coaches that would transport you to the next city. This has all changed. So that's just what I wanted to share. And then I think we're moving on to Naples now. Yeah, so here, if I have to rate favorite cities for myself, I will, I already told you this, I will do Venice first, but Naples is actually my second favorite city. And why? Because it has an enormous amount of archaeological information. The Bay of Naples is probably the most interesting archaeological area, not just in Italy, but actually some say in the world. And secondly, my second reason is it's crazy. It's just an absolutely crazy city. And again, it's a place that you can get lost in. Life is very different there in the city, and especially in the old quarters. The the noise, the smells, the animation that Italians in general have. Remember, most of you have met some, maybe have even been there. They speak with arms and feet and their whole body and stuff like this. It's just they yell at each other in the street. You can watch disagreements. I just love stuff like this. I couldn't live there, I think. It would drive me crazy, but certainly for a couple of days or so, it is life. It's a very lively city. It's a Greek settlement from the 2nd millennium BC. It's ancient. Italy's 3rd largest city, and it was called Neapolis, which means new city. The Germans actually still call it Neapel. So they use that first 2 syllables. The city and surroundings, I mentioned this already, offer some of the best archaeological history in the world. It is also, ladies and gentlemen, just a very beautiful location. It sits between Mount Vesuvius, which you have behind you, and the sea, which is in front of you, and the weather usually is good. So it just from that point, it's a great place to visit. Okay, what do we do in Napoli, in Naples? The National Archaeological Museum is interesting, and actually, I personally think it's a must, because, and Jacinta will take us in a moment to Pompeii, but remember that whatever was found in the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum was not just left there. So you see great things, but the important art was actually collected and was put into shelter, into museums. So when you go there, you actually add to your visit to Pompeii and Herculaneum. I think that's an important point. You do guided catacomb tours of San Gennaro. You can do a Mount Vesuvius excursion if you want to go up on the mountain. I personally have never done that because I wasn't that interested in that part, but that's up to everyone individually. Now, another thing that we hardly ever talk about in our industry is the other city that was buried, that is actually famous, Herculaneum. All of us always go to Pompeii, but I absolutely recommend it and tell you that it is absolutely worthwhile to also visit Herculaneum. In fact, some of the buried houses in Herculaneum were in better condition when they found them than the ones in Pompeii. It also, depending on when you go, it may actually offer less traffic. You see kind of the same drama that unfolded in 79 AD when the volcano exploded. The Naples Cathedral, the 2 castells, these are like castles on the waterfront, the Nuovo and the Del Ovo castles, they can both be visited. The Church San Domenico Maggiore is interesting, not so much from the outside, but the moment you go inside, and actually this is true for several churches, not just in Naples. You walk into a church that doesn't even look that interesting. You see it's an old church, and then you walk in and there's this explosion of architecture that just suddenly envelopes you. So this is one of those crazy. I mentioned get lost in Naples too. Now, Naples had a very bad reputation years ago, and you literally had to hold on to your underwear, pardon my French here. But this has actually gotten a lot better, and I would always recommend to not run around with jewelry and lots of money and maybe even lots of credit cards in Italy in general. And that's true for many other countries. So we shouldn't give Italy a bad rap in this. But Naples has actually gotten safer and better. They know that how important tourism is for the country, and so this has much improved. We personally have not had dramas over all these years that we exist, having sent passengers clients into this area. No dramas that I'm aware of. Do a 90-minute subterranean tour. Interesting. Many large cities offer subterranean tours nowadays. When you go to places like Berlin or London or Paris, you usually see things that happened underground there. This is more interesting in a city like Naples because you actually come across the ancient Naples that still exists underground, including stadiums that were built at that time. These are guided tours. And then there is the Donna Regina Museum Complex, which is kind of a monastic island within the city. Interesting too. A couple of tips. The historic Cafe Gambrinos. You find these things also on websites that can tell you a lot. The Trattoria San Ferdinando is famous for good food and nice ambiance. And then one of the things that some of you may know, pizza comes from Naples, it is said. So there's a small place called Antica Pizzeria da Michele. It claims to be the birthday of pizza. And here is the disappointment for many of us Americans when we go eating pizza in places like this. You have to do it because you have to find out. It's marinara and it's margarita, and that's your choice. Marinara is without cheese, and margarita is with cheese and olives, I think, and that's it. End of the story. And so when you go there and you're looking at this and you get disappointed and you are wondering, where's my Supreme? Where's my Hawaiian pizza and stuff like this? Don't even dare to ask them about this, because this is like sacrilege to the Italian. I wouldn't dare. One
It's
of the
fresh
things that
and simple.
Yes, it's fresh, and they actually often fold it over, like you would fold over bread, and you go out this way with it. But you can sit there. It's not a fancy place. There is one other thing that I want to quickly share with you, which is often overlooked, but may interest you. In the northwest corner of the Bay of Naples is a place called Baia. You can easily find it on the map. Hadrian, in fact, on July 10, 138, died there in his villa. Why do I mention this? Because it's kind of the Saint-Tropez of the Roman elite 2,000 years ago. They all had villas there. They all stayed there in the summer months. And the interesting thing about this place is that half of the ancient Baia is now under sea. It sank into the ocean. This has something to do with volcanic movements. And this is one of the only, for me, it's the only archaeological underwater park that you can actually visit. You can visit it by glass bottom boats. They also have canoes that are actually made of glass, of plastic that you can see through, so you can do it yourself. And they also allow scuba diving there in this area. So you see a part of the old Roman Baia under the sea. I think that's cool. That's fascinating. Jacinta, I think you want to talk a little bit about Pompeii.
Yes,
suburb
just very
of
briefly.
Napoli, so to speak.
I know that you touched on this, but Elena, could you just take a look and see if there are questions, because we do need to kind of move this along a little bit and wrap it up in a few minutes. So I'm going to go quickly and just talk about Pompeii, which is a vast and fascinating archaeological site in this Campania region in southern Italy, very close to the coastal city of Naples, just a short drive from there. It's very famous for the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius volcano in 79 AD. And, you know, that eruption buried the then thriving Roman city under yards of ash and pumice. Some of the inhabitants were able to escape into the countryside, others were not as fortunate. But here you can see that excavated ruins of the streets, of houses, of temples. You can actually walk through here. I recommend that you go with a guide because you'll get much more out of it, but you can spend hours here. This is not just a quick stop. It's quite expansive and fascinating to imagine what it was like back in the day when it was a living, breathing, thriving city full of people. And then I'll let you just continue on from there to the next slide.
Okay, so I'll go really quickly. Sorrento is just down the peninsula. It's on the Amalfi Coast, which is one of the most beautiful coastlines, very mild temperatures like Southern California. Sorrento is known for its picturesque old town. The fishermen's village of Marina Grande is one of the most authentic areas. And For me, I personally love their limoncello. There's lots of lemon trees in there, so they make this liqueur called limoncello, and there's nothing better than sitting on one of these little outdoor cafes, sipping your limoncello or maybe a wine, and taking in that gorgeous view. Um, Ralph, if you want to
Yes,
quickly
I'll
go
quickly
through.
bring up the rear with Capri, kind of a must too if you're in this neighborhood. May, June, September, October are perfect months to visit here. Caesar Augustus in 29 BC is said to have discovered the charm of Capri and put it on the map for the Roman elite. It's a Greek settlement that goes back to the 8th century BC. And it's also famous in the 19th century for the European literary and wealth set that favored Capri as a retreat. You do a walking tour of Capri town, and there's other assorted walks. It's actually made up of two cities. There's Capri, the town, and then there's Anna Capri, which sits at the other end of the it's kind of the quiet brother of Capri town, or quiet sister, I should say. It's excursions to Anna Capri. I mentioned this. The Blue Grotto is probably the most famous individual visit that you do. It's a boat excursion. You can also do a boat excursion around the island. Gardens of Augustus, they were formerly the Krupp Gardens. There is Via Krupp, Krupp, the German industrialist. Friedrich Krupp stayed there 100 years ago a lot and built some things. And so that's why his name shows up there. There's Monte Solaro, a climb for views. This is the highest mountains, beautiful views, but you don't have to be a big hiker to get up there. And I want to give you a couple of tips. One absolutely important is there is a very famous gelateria, Buono Core. It's a must. So ice cream in Italy is actually a must anyhow. I have never really been disappointed with gelato in Italy. So this is of particular fame. There is actually, believe it or not, a couple of Michelin stars on this island. This island is not that big. Il Rocco is a 1 Michelin star. Fish and they have a desserts room. Some of us like that. And Il Olivio, 2 Michelin stars in the 5-star Capri Palace Hotel. The Capri Palace Hotel is interesting. It's an upscale hotel, but it's actually in Anna Capri. And there are some recommendations. Some people think that staying in Capri is actually worthwhile 2 or 3 nights. And unless you want to be in the middle of the crowd, you may want to pick a hotel in Anna Capri, and then do your excursions from there. So in both places, very nice hotels exist. And I think that's about all the time we have, Jacinta.
Well, yes.
I'll just go one more slide and we're done.
Yeah.
So that really did take us through everywhere in Italy. This slide, we just put a couple of other areas that we didn't cover. Milan, fashion industry, the biggest Gothic cathedral. Also, Michelangelo's famous Last Supper can be seen in Milan. Lake Como, the lakes up in the northern Italy are gorgeous. George Clooney thinks so. He has his villa in Lake Como. Cinque Terre is 5 villages linked together by a ancient footpath. And then Sicily is amazing. It's the largest island in Mediterranean. It has a rich and unique culture, great archaeological and ancient sites, and the food is amazing. And then the Puglia region is the actual heel. If you look on the map of Italy, it looks like a boot. The heel part is the Puglia region, and it's known for these round Trulli houses. Has 60 million olive trees, and that is where all of our olive oil, 40% of the olive oil in Italy is formed there.
Okay.
And
Elena,
that takes me to the end.
Yeah, if you could just quickly look and see if there are any questions or comments. I just want to do a wrap up or just a quick recap. What we've shown you is a group itinerary. It's a 9-day itinerary. I will actually send you a copy of it, email it to you in follow up. You will also receive a $100 per person gift certificate towards your own Italy getaway, either later this year or next year. That's a special gift for attending today, taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And then I just wanted to discuss some of the travel arrangements. We did talk about group travel. I think the three of us will agree that post-COVID, one of the things that we are seeing is more interest in small group travel, and it could be family members. We've also seen friends traveling together, and of course you can travel individually as well. When we talk about custom travel, we're talking about an itinerary that is tailored to your interests and needs and preferences. And we have access to hotels from 4-star to 5-star to villas, which we mentioned. Transportation could be motor coach for a larger group, smaller vehicles for a private group. It's certainly possible to go between cities with train travel very conveniently. So all of that can be worked out. But let me give you just a quick and easy example of how that would work. Let's say that it's your first trip to Italy and you want to visit what I call the Holy Trinity, Rome, Florence, and Venice. And you want to spend a few days in each, maybe 3 or 4 days in each, so that you have a good balance of activity, some sightseeing, and also some free time to kind of explore and discover on your own. As you've heard, we don't recommend that you have a very tightly scheduled trip, with every minute just packed. You do want to have some time to enjoy the time and the place, to be present with it, have a little breathing room, relax and really take it in and enjoy it. That's the beauty of a custom designed itinerary. Now, if you are thinking about Italy for later this year or for next year, I would encourage you to seriously think about making arrangements, because people have not traveled for 1 to 2 years and they're eager to get back out there. So I am available for a complimentary consult to discuss this with you further. And Elena, do we have any questions?
No, we don't have any questions. If anyone does, please type them in now. We'll be happy to answer them. We have one comment. They love the tour of Italy. Can't wait to go.
Okay, that's good. That means success. Well, I would like to thank you all for attending. I would like to thank my colleagues, Elena and Ralph. Grazie for being here and sharing some of your thoughts and suggestions and recommendations. And we've covered a lot. We haven't expected you to take notes on any of it, but feel free to contact me, and we will say goodbye until next time.
Bye-bye.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci, yes, more appropriate. Ciao. Ciao, Bella.